Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. So good morning, everyone. I am super excited today because I got a dynamic duo going on here. I have Erick Dorris, who is someone who I used to work with, who now is the director of community organizing with the Arts Alliance of Illinois and also president of the school board. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about himself. And we also are blessed to have the superintendent of Joliet School District here, Dr. Theresa Rouse. So before we get started with our Urban Legends segment for today, Erick, can you just give us a little bit of background about your history in this whole thing, schools and everything else that you've been doing?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Hall. Thanks for having us, first of all. So my background in the arts is that I was exposed to the arts at a very early age in church. And then in elementary school and high school, I was in the band. I played the trombone. I did theater and choral programs. And that led me to pursue a bachelor's in theater from Millikan University down in Decatur, Illinois. I worked at nonprofits after I graduated for a few years and then spent about 10 years in Chicago, which is where we met, Dr. Hall. First, I was at CPS's central office and then with the AUSL network. In those roles, I managed out-of-school time programming. And then at the network, I also supported specialist or resource teachers, which were art, music, and physical education. So I learned so much during my time working in the CPS system, but I also missed working in the arts. So I went back to school and earned my master's in arts management. And since then, I've found myself working at the intersection of the arts, policy, and civic engagement through work in Joliet as a school board member, as a member of our Arts Commission, and then in my current role as Director of Community Organizing at Arts Alliance, Illinois. So that's kind of my background and story.
That is a lot. That is a lot. And I think that when we'll get into it later when we're talking, but I think that what happens a lot of times in schools is the arts are the first thing that people think to cut when there's time for budget cuts. And we know that things are like tighter than ever. But at the same time, like I've seen kids just flourish through the arts. And so I'm advocating through this work and this conversation that we're going to have today for that not to be the case, that we drop the arts. Okay, Theresa.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Theresa.
Yeah, it's all good, Dr. Hall. Thank you so much. And if nothing else, you've got two people on here who will not let budget cuts take our arts program away. So we'll get to that later. But I was also exposed to the arts at a very early age through church and through school. I fell in love with piano and clarinet because I fell in love with our music teacher in kindergarten. She was the most amazing person ever. She gave me my first piano lesson on my 6th birthday. She came on my birthday and gave me that. It was amazing. I added violin in 6th grade and played all the way through high school. And now I actually play violin with our junior high orchestras when they invite me to come join them, which is a blast, being able to play with the students. And I even accompany some of the choirs with with piano and sing. My undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate degrees are all in education and educational leadership. I wanted to be a teacher at a very early age and then an administrator as I experienced some other pieces. 22 years working in education in California, 2 years of experience teaching in Palestine, and now this is my 7th year here in Joliet.
Awesome. I can't wait. Okay. So, so why do you think, just in general, that the arts are so important for children? So important for us all. And then, like, where do you think we can begin to help administrators and people who are making decisions about funding realize that importance?
Yeah. If I could talk a little bit just about the arts sector, and then I'll pass it to Dr. Rouse to talk about how we see that in our schools. But I think, first of all, a lot of educators don't know the size of the arts industry in our state. The arts and creative sector, it contributes $30 billion to Illinois' economy every year and employs nearly 250,000 workers. So it is a big industry in the arts, and arts education plays a very crucial and important part to that. But however, during the pandemic, the percent of job losses in the arts, mostly at nonprofits, was about 13%, which was 13 times more than other nonprofits in different sectors. So many of our artists and creatives are leaving Illinois. And that actually affects how it shows up in our schools. A lot of people don't always remember that most art and music teachers are practicing artists in their communities. And then without an overall healthy arts sector to give them opportunities for professional development, to show their art and do exhibitions, we will start to see those teachers kind of leave the K-12 system because there's a lack of talent and there's a lack of opportunities for them. So I'm going to skip the rest of my speech and pass it to Dr. Rouse to talk about our
we
school.
have to come back to it though, Eric, because that like is so important because we don't talk about it. Maybe the three of us need to write an article about the arts or publish it somewhere, because for administrators like the two of you to have the arts background that you have, you know the importance of it. But in the most of the cases, there aren't people who have had an arts background. And so reading and math, we got to get our scores, like we got to do that. But you don't understand that the students who are the ones who are artistic in the way that they show up, artistic in the way that they express themselves. And I think everybody is like at our core, right? An artist, but somebody to bring that out, like the teachers that you two discussed. But okay. All right, Dr. Theresa.
Absolutely. But, and I completely agree, because the reality is we have to see arts education as being just as valuable as English language arts and math and science and social studies. You know, it is an integral part of our curriculum instruction department. We have a coordinator fully dedicated to the fine arts program, and we've expanded that program to the extent possible every year that I've been here. Now, the teacher shortage is hurting us, because we've lost some of our elementary teachers that were focused on art and music. We purposely added, when I first came 7 years ago, the district did not have art or music for our kindergarten through third grade. They started with art at fourth grade. They started with music at sixth grade. That's a travesty. So we really worked in and focused in and looked at getting art and music teachers all the way down to the kindergarten level. And we had to start small. Those teachers, bless their hearts, they were at 4, 5, 6 different buildings providing those services, but they stuck with us. And we have grown that program. The hard part is we struggle with adding to that program, because there aren't enough art educators coming out of the universities these days. There's not enough teachers, period, but specifically focused in art and music. But we do have elementary art, elementary music happening all the way down to the kindergarten level now. Awesome. Our 5th grade students begin instrumental music so that they're ready for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for orchestra, band, or choir. And all of our middle schoolers get general music if they're not in orchestra, band, or choir. They have a general music component as part of their day as well. So the reality of a well-rounded education has to include the arts. We have to approach the whole child. And, you know, if we stop fixating on just the math and reading tests, then we'll actually see those tests improve as we have a well-rounded child, because the arts help us with critical thinking and problem solving dramatically. But we have to increase the teacher population to be able to increase the programs.
Yes. And I don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So there aren't a lot of arts positions. So people aren't choosing to have that as a major in college. And it just is, because I remember as a principal having a plethora of resumes for any position, including the arts. And now all of a sudden, like it's just not happening.
No.
So I'm going to go a little bit off our script. So recently, I teach at National Louis, and recently one of the students in my master's program asked that I come to her school for a presentation that they do every year, and it was in the suburbs, and they were doing Little Shop of Horrors. Mm-hmm. It was so good, like it was Broadway good. Mm-hmm. Parents had donated to get the costumes that the kids needed, the set design. It was in a beautiful building. They had practiced the entire year. There were all these people who were choral directors. I don't know if that's the right term, but just like the singing was amazing. The dancing was amazing. And I'm thinking these are like 13 through 16-year-old students. Mm-hmm. And it just really hurt my feelings that none of the schools that I've ever worked in with Black and brown children would have something like that. So at my elementary school, we had my own elementary school when I went to school, plays every year. And it was a big production. It was a big deal. And now, like, we've lost that part. Like, I know all the songs in Oklahoma, and I can't say many people. Not many people can say that. Like, if people go, you are strange. But it felt amazing when we would have those plays. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But at this Little Shop of Horrors presentation, I just left and like cried in the car because it's so unfair that, and I'm not mad that district is able to do it. It's just a district where the districts and the schools in which I've worked, where most of the kids are Black and brown. Most of the kids are like, it's either between 90 to 100% free and reduced. They never, and I know they flourish in that situation. I don't know. What do you think are, like, do we need legislation? Like, what is it you think we need in order to get people to see how important this is as a thing?
I'll be honest, from an education point of view, we need to shine a light on it. The last thing we need is more legislation, just to be honest, because typically legislation comes with no money attached to it, with yet something else we have to do with no money, and that just further frustrates the budgetary situation. But the reality of shining a light on it, we're a pre-K to 8 school district. We don't have high schools. They go to the high school district, the Joliet Township High School District. And in the high school district, they love their orchestra bands, their choirs, their theater, because they're getting all of our kids. We're their number one supplier of talent. As a 10,000 student elementary district, we provide them the majority of their students. Right. And they have amazing productions that they're able to put on because the students are coming in ready to move those pieces forward. It's all about that pipeline up for students them back as educators. Another district that I know, a heavy Black and brown population who does some amazing work is Leiden High School District up in the just near the airport. They actually 2 years ago, I believe it was, commissioned a play by a Spanish author, and their students performed it. They actually did it over Zoom during the pandemic. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. They've done some amazing work up there, again, tied to their equity work. Ours, I believe, is tied to our equity work as well, because if we truly believe that all means all, then all of our students, regardless of their diversity, regardless of their background, regardless of the poverty level, deserve to have a quality education, which includes the arts.
I love it. I love it. So if I'm a parent and the arts aren't infused into what happens at a school where my children attend, either one of you have some suggestions of community, like what could I do? Or are there community resources in Chicago and the suburbs that I could reach out to in order to like do what I need to do on my own, since my school isn't gonna provide it for right now until we get this like worked out? What are some suggestions you two have for parents just looking for outlets for their children?
One thing that I think we did very well at the network where you and I met was tying arts and physical education classes to out-of-school time arts and athletics. I think that frame, as well as Dr. Rouse's idea about tying the arts to equity, it's like, how are you going to ground the arts in a conversation that's really going to move school administrators to see it as valuable, that's going to move school boards to see that it's moving the needle, whatever needle that it is. And I think that having some kind of frame around it was really helpful, especially in Chicago. And a lot of that was funded through partnerships, through 21st Century Community Learning grants, through a small grants program that we started there. So there are lots of resources. You can also reach out to me at Arts Alliance Illinois, and I can connect you to our arts education advocacy groups. So there's resources there. I just don't think parents know about them, especially if you're coming from an under-resourced community.
Right. Eric, what is the website that parents could use to reach out to you at the Arts Alliance?
Oh, they can go to artsalliance.org, and we have a contact us, and you can fill out the form, and we can connect you to. And Dr. Rouse knows, was it the ILMEA and the IAEA? There are actually groups of advocacy organizations for visual arts, for band, that are out there that can help.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rouse, what do you think? Yeah.
Well, as far as within a school district, parents can always advocate at the board level. They could come speak and request things such as the arts. They could speak to their principal, to teachers. The more administrators and board members hear of that desire, the more they hear it. They have to start paying attention to it. It's out there, and there are so many programs that make it truly make the arts, especially music, accessible to children, because they don't have to, the rental fees for an instrument are kept really low. They don't have to purchase an instrument. They can rent it, or they can buy it over time. We have a great relationship with it's Quinlan and Fabish, I believe. His name. They do an amazing job working with our families on instrument rental or purchase. They and having those things available, so families don't feel that they can't because they don't have at home. It's okay. We can work together to help make those things happen, because the earlier a child starts with music in particular, or visual arts, the better. Because just like any kind of learning, we start them in kindergarten on purpose, because their minds are sponges. They absorb everything, It's just amazing. And we need those early ages to begin these types of programs so that we can embed them in their life. For me, my music is like therapy to me. If I'm having a bad day, I go home, sit down at the piano, which happens to be the piano I had my first piano lesson on.
Oh my goodness.
It's at my house. Sit down at that piano and play, and it works out the kinks. It's therapy. So it's critically important. We cannot continue to ignore it.
So the next question kind of leads out of that question about what parents can do. So if I'm at home with my child and I just want to spark an interest in just the power of music, and like, it hurts my heart a lot of times to see kids just on like devices and stuff like that, and not taking the time to really listen to different kinds of music, really just be able to like dance if I want to, like, or all those things that the arts encompasses. At my own house, I'm a parent. What can I do? Oh, yeah. I can turn off the television, I can turn off the device, but what can I do to
put the device down?
Put the device down.
The reality is parents can do so much just by playing music in the home, singing along with the music, clapping to the beat, dancing a little with the music, reading books. Yes. And the rhythm of the voice adds to those pieces. All those interactive pieces with a child as they're growing up matter. People question the notion of reading books to infants. And I'm like, oh, no. The more you read to a child, the more language they hear, the better they're prepared for life, but also for school. So the more music and arts that we expose the child to when they're really young, and it's not hard, and it picks everybody up in the household. If we're singing and dancing, we're not sad.
Yes.
right?
Yes,
and if we're having
yes.
a bad day, sometimes singing and dancing is the best thing to do, so we don't go a different path, you know.
Yes.
But I agree with you. The more we can get people to put down the device and really have that interaction, the better we're going to be.
Yes, yes.
And I just want to add that, you know, my first experience going to professional theater was actually as a student in District 86. I went to see Phantom of the Opera downtown, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is people can do this for a living." And it changed the trajectory of my life. Now, am I on the stage now on Broadway? No, but it helped me get to the place where I am now, where I can advocate for the arts and be part of the arts community and found different careers that I didn't even know existed in the field. So I think exposure is just so important. Go to that play, go to that community, you know, concert. We have great open parks here that have performances, events and festivals. Like, just expose your child to different cultures and different art forms. It's just like reading to them, like Dr. Rouse said.
It is amazing, because I read about this research, and you probably heard it before, and I'm not sure I'll get it completely right. But they had like a paperclip, and they gave it to kids who were in kindergarten and asked how many ways they could think of using the paperclip. And they came up with like thousands of things. Like, I can make an earring, I can hang a painting, it just all kinds of stuff. And by the time those same kids were in 5th grade or some higher grade, where we had zapped all their creativity out of their heads. You put paper together with that. Like, it's so the hitting them early in the creativity in the little ones.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, back in the day in elementary school, there would be an entire class period where we would listen to classical music and draw a picture. What do you think of when you hear this music? Easy. That doesn't take anything. You can find classical music on any website.
Yes.
Right? And you play it, let the classical music speak. Doesn't have to have words. What does the music say to you in your soul? Now draw it. Now, I was a little challenged for art, so mine were always landscapes, 2 mountains with the sun in between and birds.
With the tree.
Exactly. I could do that. So I was always the landscape girl, but you know, it's okay, because I got really good at landscapes. But
so I typically end with my guests reflecting on a quote. So tell me, what about this quote or this message resonates with you? I think we need to remember that a lot of energy was put into changing things to get us to the point where we are now. But being where we are now doesn't mean that we don't have to put in the same kind of energy to get us to a place where we ought to be. And that's Kerry James Marshall, and he's one of my favorite artists. I think he's from Chicago. I don't know, but he did work with AUSL when we were at Herzl, Eric. But it doesn't mean that we don't have to put in the same kind of energy to get us to a place where we ought to be. In terms of the arts, where is it that we ought to be? And just give us your final thoughts.
I'll start, if you don't mind. I have a mantra that I say to myself regularly. It's that life is a journey, keep going. And I think that if we encourage the students, staff, our community, and ourselves to be lifelong learners, we can be better accustomed to experiencing change, ambiguity, feeling uncomfortable with other people, and also sometimes with ourselves, right? So I think creativity and the arts have helped me maintain some of my best relationships. And those are usually with people who I've had a disagreement with, or I've had to hash it out. But we've been able to move forward together with creativity and some empathy and some kindness. And all of that is ongoing work that we do on this journey. So it's not really about the destination. The best part of life is really experiencing every step of the journey. So I'm going to pass it to Dr. Rouse.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, one of my favorite quotes is the notion of the whole purpose of education, including the arts, is to turn mirrors into windows. We start school by looking inside when we're young. Who are we as a person? And then who are we as part of our community and then the world? But if we don't stop and clean that window off or that mirror off once in a while, we don't see so clearly. And so that's that ongoing work. That's the journey, is that cleaning of the mirror if we're young and still learning about ourselves inside, or the window that we're looking out of into the world, making certain that we're truly seeing what's there. When I got my first pair of glasses, I couldn't believe the colors that I had not seen, and it's that whole notion of what are we clearly seeing, and everything that comes before us, whether it's a budget issue, whether it's, just craziness in the world like the pandemic. If we can learn something from it, it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. It's all good. It's all good. So you all are going to have to come back for part 2, because when we post this, I'm really going to ask parents to pay attention to the messages that you gave us today, because I think we just overlooking the power that the arts provide. I was working at a school in New York, and the principal was aligned somehow with Jay-Z, and he had put a whole studio in the school for kids. So kids were able to do their raps or whatever they wanted to do with music. The kids who want to play were able to have instruments. Those kids were never absent. Mm-hmm. They were never absent, because that thing drew them to the building in a way. And I'm not saying reading and math aren't important, but there's something about the arts that gets, like, it's in our souls. And so just finding the ways to connect with kids through that linkage is absolutely so important. Well, thank you two so very much. You will have to come back for part 2. I'm so excited that you were able to join today.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. I love this series. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.